Joining me now in the studio is Doug Herbert, international affairs commentator.
Hi.
Doug, as we see there, Israel poised to intensify and expand its assault in Gaza in the coming days. This less than 2 months after that collapse in ceasefire talks. So what is driving this all-out war strategy?
Yeah, well, obviously this is all open to speculation, but it's a very fair question, more than fair to ask, Annette, because look at the reality so far. Over the course 18, 19 months of war, you have had Israel literally deploying hundreds of thousands of soldiers, right? Nonstop pummeling, basically Hamas in Gaza, with the civilians caught in the crossfire all along. It has not defeated Hamas. Now, that has been, yes, Netanyahu's goal to defeat Hamas as a viable military and political force. But that has not happened. If it hasn't happened with hundreds of thousands of soldiers deployed over a year and a half or more of conflict, how does he think that deploying tens of thousands more, that is ramping up the presence and sustaining it longer, is going to change the dynamics, is going to change the calculus of this war and somehow achieve something that with far many more soldiers he's been unable to achieve? So the question is, what's driving that change of strategy? Well, you could say either he really believes that this is going to lead to defeating Hamas, or he is enthralled to his far-right ministers who have always been on board with this absolute, full-force, maximum strategy. You do not stop this war until Hamas is wiped out. The hostage families, they don't say it this way, be damned, but essentially their thinking excludes the hostage families, because the Hostage Family Forum, who's been extremely vocal and present and visible throughout this war, they basically say, essentially, in not so many words, that they think this is almost a death sentence for the remaining hostages, this type of plan. If the Israeli government really cared about their missing relatives, their loved ones, then they would do everything to make that the top priority, not ramping up the war, which threatens to make it even more perilous, more treacherous for the hostages still remaining there. What's in it? What is the strategy here? Well, I guess to defeat Hamas. But so far that has not worked, and there's no proof throughout this war that merely ramping up the number of soldiers on the ground is going to do anything. Not to mention that the plan reportedly includes plans to displace tens, if not hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from the north of Gaza, where most of them have resided, to the south. Many of them have been uprooted many times. So this basically leaves everything up in the air. It seems that not only are we back to the early days of this war, Annette, and that strategy, it could potentially be even more intense and worse. That's the fear of many on the ground.
And this is coming as Israel's continuing that blockade on food, fuel, and medicine, and all types of aid into Gaza. And it's created what aid organisations have called a catastrophic situation. And it could be about to get worse, because there is an Israeli plan to overhaul whatever remaining aid is being distributed in Gaza.
Yeah. So the Israelis are officially presenting this, even though it hasn't explicitly been spelled out yet, as a plan to start getting the aid back flowing into Gaza, getting it into the hands of the Palestinians. The problem, say almost every aid organization, plus the United Nations, is it simply isn't going to work. This plan, the basic outlines of it are, yes, for 9 weeks, no food, fuel, medicine, or other supplies have been allowed to get into Gaza. It's been essentially blocked. What this plan proposes to do is set up what's called, I put this in quotes, my quotes, logistics hubs. That is centralized checkpoints, which would be overseen by Israel, that would subcontract to private firms. Private companies would basically, not the UN, not aid agencies, which have a lot of experience, decades of experience doing this type of thing. Private firms, unknown at this point in time, would be handling the distribution at distribution points. Now, given what I said in the first answer, Annette, how do the Palestinians get to these logistics hubs, even presuming that, that the companies giving them out will have the food at hand? This is the problem. They say, aid organizations say this plan won't work. It will make things worse, a catastrophic situation even more catastrophic, even more dire. You need to get the food to Palestinian civilians where the Palestinians are, not displace them further and make them have to go to these logistics hubs. Who knows how they would even begin to try to get there? So the plan presented as a goodwill gesture by Israel to try to get food to Palestinians again, but in reality, aid groups say this looks like a no-go from the very outset.
Doug, thank you for that